Welcome back, everybody, to Be the Trader. Today, I have a very special guest. A lot of you guys should already know who he is. If you don't, just look him up on YouTube, look him up on Google, and you'll get a whole background of him, of information. He's been well known in the industry for quite some time. His name's Nate Michaud. Nate, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I know it took a little while to get it all together, but there's a lot of moving parts these days. So we're here, and let's do it.
Awesome. Well, just for case, for those who don't know, I mean, Nate's a day trader himself. He also coaches and mentors others. He's the owner and founder of Investors Underground. And Nate, I know I kind of gave them a quick overview, but if you could tell people, just from your point of view, what got you started, and then we could take it from there.
I mean, I guess going way back, it was really my uncle had always been successful, had always done well. And I knew that he was into stocks. So that's kind of, when you're young, you kind of go, I want to be the broker, go the broker route. You want to be like a asset manager, whatever it may be. So at the time I was working at Staples. They were doing well. I wanted to buy some. I didn't have a brokerage account. He had asked if I wanted, to give him some money. He would invest for me. And it was almost to that point where I gave him that money that I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to open my own and start dabbling. So, 3, 4, 5, 6 blown up accounts later, you start to kind of, get it. And, OTCs were kind of the Wild West at the time. It's almost as crazy as it is now in NASDAQs. That's what was happening in OTCs. And so it was a good time to build an account. And, that's pretty much, my start anyway. And then there was a huge transition into NASDAQs, where, OTCs went cold for a really, really long time. And I just had to kind of relearn everything, kind of redefine new strategies, and just totally revamp everything that I did. So that, flash forward 10 years, beyond, what I was already doing. I've been trading for about 17 years now, I think. But, what I do now compared to what I started with is totally, black and white. It's totally different.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, first off, 17 years, that's a long time in the market. And secondly, what you said just now of like what you started doing and what you do now is totally different. Elaborate on that. I'm curious on what you mean in terms of that.
You always have to adapt, obviously. And, even in current market environments, low floats and different types of momentum, market going straight up, never coming back down again. All that kind of stuff is all things that we're adapting with, maybe not realizing it every single day. But this whole thing was, just OTCs used to be where it was at. You're trading 2 cents, 5 cents, 10 cent type names. You used to have, if you guys remember, like awesome penny stocks used to have like these major promotions, and these stocks would go from like 1 to 6 or like 20 cents to $2. And I was semi good at filings back then, and you could start to figure out and connect the dots with third parties in those filings. And sometimes you get in ahead. And other times you'd be too ahead and it dropped 50%. But there was all those different opportunities then, and all of a sudden it just was like done, and there was nothing out there. So then you start trading the apples and things like that, and you don't really know what you're doing. It works, but it's a totally different beast. And I've seen a lot of people go from OTCs to NASDAQ and actually never be able to make it. They still are in that scout mentality, still in that just OTC mentality, and haven't been able to fully shift over to NASDAQ trading. And NASDAQ trading doesn't care about you. OTCs was a little bit different. It could be pushed around by 1 or 2 main players. Mm-hmm. But in NASDAQ, you're like less than this, and they don't care about you. Even if you're sized up, you're still this big. So, that's the hard part. And you always have to remember that, because NASDAQ will humble you badly.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about adapting, because you've obviously been adapting throughout the years and changing the way you've been trading. But let me ask you this. At the core, are you like the fundamentals that made you successful, that made you consistent, are those consistent, or did those change as well?
Continually changing. Like before, I never really cared about the fundamental. Like I know you're talking a little
not fundamentals, but like fundamentals like dribbling. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay.
but one of the changes, and I know you weren't talking about those fundamentals, but one of the changes that I do apply now is actual fundamentals to some of the trading strategies. But yeah, same thing. The concepts are the same, the setups are the same. It is just a more you start to fine tune those setups, and now maybe instead of getting bent on the front side and getting I call it like getting pre-exhausted, right? So the trade's going to come, but you get there a little ahead, and you're there, you exhaust out, and then you miss the entire trade. So although I was decent at trading that front side of the move, there was a lot of money that I lost. There was a lot of missed opportunities because I pretty much exhausted myself. So now I've been kind of fine tuning that, and just who cares if you don't get the top? Let it exhaust everybody out. Like, let that candle happen, and then think about trying to get in there. Look at the pops. Look at failed follow through momentum, I call it, and let that trade kind of come to you. I've done a lot more. Less trading. I mean, obviously I still trade a lot, but like the number of trades for any particular idea, I'm looking for less entries, 1 or 2 exits. A lot of times you'll see me scale, and then that's the one big exit. I like to kind of come by surprise on my exit, but on my entries, I like to just kind of like blackjack or whatever, or poker, which I don't play, but you don't want to show anybody your hand. So I kind of like to slowly get in there, and then when I'm ready to get out, I just get out.
Nice. And so when it comes to, it sounds like as you evolved as a trader, and I relate to this because like I used to always try to get the top, and then now it's kind of like you wait for that moment where it just slaps you, right? Where it's just like, hey, this is it's the back is set.
Yeah.
So it seems like you yourself, used to be, I want to get, scale on the front side. And then over time, now you're like, I want to wait until the move is actually set, because it sounds like you've realized that if you can just get that back end, you can still make some pretty good coin and size in appropriately and then have an ideal risk.
A lot of people think they're going to miss the move, but the move actually happens after that initial pullback, the biggest part of the move. So we're all afraid to move. We're all afraid to miss like this much of the move. Meanwhile, if we just wait for that to happen, we can get there.
Yeah. And it's all about that fear mentality of missing out on, like, you think it's not going to bounce, and it bounces all the time. You think it's not going to bounce. I'm curious on from your journey to where you are today, is there something that you are personally working on as a trader that you want to improve on, that you're focused on to become better at?
I think I'm there. Like this year, obviously, should be a good year for a lot of traders, but I think I'm excelling at what I want to excel at, and it's not necessarily P&L based. It's just processing, continually fine tuning, continually not necessarily pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but pushing how much you can actually size into things. And there's so much volume right now that you can, but being able to at least open your eyes, like, hey, you can do this right now. You should be doing this right now. And compounding, not necessarily the P&L. Yes, that is an end result, but compounding the strategy that you have, compounding the opportunities that you have. And I think a lot of people focus on P&L and trying to get to, X. And then you end up going backwards, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that if you continually try to, okay, this did happen, now I should be doing this. And I think one of the things that's made me better, just kind of verbalizing that, even though I do the Sunday scans and stuff like that you probably see, not necessarily that, but I tell people all the time, just verbalize what you're trying to do. And then when it happens, you actually do it, because, there's so many times that you get into a position and that wasn't your plan. If you verbalize it, you're going to behave a little bit better. So a lot of times I just verbalize what I'm looking to do. And when it happens, you just got to do it. It's just going to be, second nature, part of the process, and then just let things compound.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I actually record just for personal use to kind of like coach myself. I record my whole trading day and verbalize in this mic what I'm thinking, what I'm going to do. And then I'll rewatch it. If I lose, it helps tremendously. So I love it you say that, because especially when you're teaching or coaching, I'm sure you're just I hear you're always typing, like telling people what's going on, what your thoughts
Yep.
are, what you're looking at. And I love that you said earlier that it's trying to compound, and you kept on saying like don't focus on the P&L because that will come, but like compounding your efforts, compounding what's working. And I don't know too much if you have or if you do this, but I'm curious. It sounds like you don't. It sounds like you're more focused on process and you're not really sharing like P&L, which I love if that is the case. But I'm just curious, like your thoughts on that in terms of like how do you separate? Number one, two questions. Number one, do you do that? And then number two, like how do you separate when you're trying to show people, hey man, you got to compound and you got to get this growth without focusing on P&L? Because as you mentioned, when you focus on P&L, you somehow take steps back.
Right.
So I'm just curious on how you're able, like how you help people with that.
Mostly about scaling. By the way, I record my screen every single day as well. So pretty much my main monitor that has all my main trades and my P&L and everything like that. I do that same thing. And I would encourage, there's certain like setups. I would encourage you guys to record, the big momentum type names, because you can learn so much in such a small time frame. It's so pronounced on those particular trades, and you can utilize that for everything else. But as far as like scaling and all that kind of stuff, it's really like zoning in on those A plus setups is really what the focus point is for me. So like A bus, KNDI are two recent examples where the volume is just so huge and the float is just huge. You can't go crazy size on a low float type name, right? Because at some point, maybe you win 90% of them, but that other 10% or that other one is going to take all those gains away, right? So I think that it's really understanding and what I at least push or try to explain to people is which ones are those A plus type setups, letting that trade come to you, letting it break down key levels. And as far as scaling in, you don't need to focus P&L based, but you need to focus on what makes a good entry level, what makes a good scale level. And what I tell people is just pretend that you're not in the trade yet, right? Because once we're in a trade, we have a good average, then we can just, we just fire in more. All of a sudden we're like, oh crap, I just went from 10 to 50K. I just ruined my average. But if you pretend you're not in that trade, you pretend that, okay, if I'm not in here, where's a good entry? And then the next level down. All right, if I'm not in here, where's a good entry? Then you're protecting that average as you're going down. And then anytime that there's big flushes, things like that, I like to size down around a core. I'm still not I'm going to hold XXXXL size, throughout the entire day because 2 or 3 of those out of 10 are going to, come back. You're going to get frustrated and, it's just, it's an annoying part of the process. But, as far as doing it without P&L, I don't show P&L on purpose just because it doesn't look, a lot of people do it and that's great. They do some and then they don't, and so, some people are consistent, some people aren't. There's a lot that are. But at least from my business too, from a personal level, once you have kids and things like that, you don't need people poking around, right? Number one. Number two, even if you do it, even if you do audit it, you're still going to have all kinds of, people out there saying stuff anyway. Yeah. So the real focus for me is, why did you make that trade? Where did you scale in? All that kind of stuff. And when you blast P&L in people's faces, they only care about, the profits. They don't realize, well, crap, you lost 200 grand on that. Like, to get to that point, that could be a blow up for somebody, right? So if they always, I use this example, Greg, LX21 a while back, and he had posted, this is way back, but like, I don't know, maybe it was a $600,000 or $800,000 gain. And everybody's like, this is amazing. Like, how'd you do that? But they skip right over the $200,000 loss, the $400,000 loss. And it's like, are you okay with that or no? So, that's why, I focus that process. I focus non-P&L just because that's the type of person that I want to attract to, IU or anything like that. I don't want the guy that sees a P&L and thinks he's going to buy a Lambo tomorrow. That's not my end goal with any of this stuff. So I think if you focus proper process, that's what's going to carry you in the end.
Awesome, man. I'm curious on, from your own personal experience and your growth, right? Just throughout the years, were there times where you were just like, there was times where you woke up and where you're just like, man, like you started like you're doing so well that you start to have self-doubt in that? Does that make sense? Like, did that ever happen to you?
Definitely when you have that dumb loss, after like after a good stretch, and then you start to try to make back. So the only time, it's not really a doubt, but the only time in my past that I've had those kind of issues is when I have a big loss, and then I keep on trying, like I'm up big the next day, but it's not enough. You keep on going to try to make that back, and you end up flat. And then you go up, make it back, flat. And it's 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by. So that's why one of the biggest things I focus on is just next, like the next day.
Yep.
Move on. No matter if you made $1 million yesterday or you lost $1 million. I mean, that's obviously a big number, but 100K, 10K, whatever it may be, move on. And just like if you killed it, if you're so focused on that, you're going to end up losing the next day. Same thing when you're losing, there's nothing you can do about it. And I did a video about this when I lost, PTI. I lost like 200 grand on it. And that sent me for a loop for a little while. This was maybe 2 years ago. And like for a month of, trying to get that back. So what I tell everybody is nothing you can do. Focus on what got you there. That one trade, it's an outlier. It's not something that you typically do, but look at where you've come. Look at the last month, look at the last 3 months, look at the last 6 months. And so that should give you, that knowledge. I still got it. I just made this mistake. And how do I avoid that in the future?
But what about when the time comes when you're doing well and you haven't taken a loss? You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it doesn't happen to you, and that's
no,
fine.
that did. I mean, I just did that on Sunday Scam this week, and Kodak. I mean, that was my biggest P&L swing to date. Just because so June was my biggest month ever, and I made more in June than I had in any year at all. And then July was almost about 2.5 times that. And so I could do no wrong. And then Kodak came along, and, it still wasn't good, but it was a 7-figure swing for me intraday, which I haven't done before. And so I had a huge trade on Monday, a huge trade on Tuesday. Wednesday, I went for a nice little ride, but it ended up okay, not good, but okay. And then Thursday and Friday, Thursday, I had my best trading day of the year, coming off my worst trading day of the year. But it's just that next mentality, And so, that I got a little rocky this week, and I've been really pushing. Like KNDI was the Thursday trade, which I came, it was A+ setup, and I was ready for it because it reminded me of ABUS, which was just a week ago. And so I was ready for it. That was the time that I want to risk. And if I lost, I lost. I have my risk parameters, things like that. But, that's when I wanted to push. But most of the time, I only scale into the winners. I will dabble. I will start into a bunch of different names, and I will scale into what works. So my P&L on my gains is usually much bigger than what my losses are. And it's that occasional one that gets away, which it's only been a few, KODK, EQ, maybe alt back in when they first started to go, ALT, when all the mass plays started to go. But now I can at least, knock on wood, but it's less than like a handful. Prior years, it's, a dozen. And you go back to those dozen days and think, I could have been up so much more. But it's just always fine tuning and eliminating those. But yeah, so, it's definitely, you got to come and you got to be prepared right now. Otherwise, it's not a good place to be for a trader.
Absolutely.
You can make a ton, but if you're wrong, at least anyway, from a short seller perspective.
True. For anyone really, you could lose everything you put in. So I'm curious on, since you also coach and you mentor and you help a lot of people out there, is there something that you feel like people have the misconception or misbelief that if they solve X, they are going to be great?
It all comes down to personality and drive and all that kind of stuff, I think. I have a great buddy who has learned from one of the top traders that I know. And, you can know everything, but it's really about your personality and your risk management. You can train everything, but it's just about whether or not you get it. And some people just don't get it, or at least it takes longer. So everybody's always like, if I learn, I train, I do this, how long can I expect consistency? It could be tomorrow. It could be, 2 years from now. But the key is to understand the concepts, and over time, if it's a good strategy, it's going to work. But, I think that's the biggest thing, is that you can't, you can train everybody, but the biggest issue with traders is risk management, taking losses. And that's really what it comes down to. So everybody can learn, everybody can do it. It's just what we do when we're wrong that sets, the 10% or whatever the number may be now. I don't know. But right now it's probably 90% make money. But, the point is that anybody can do it. It literally comes down to what you do with your losers that sets you apart. Because even if you took an even or up strategy as like your goal for the day, even or up, that adds up so fast. If you can minimize those losers and keep those red days, to a minimum, it's giving back a week, giving back a month, giving back a quarter that hurts you. And so anytime that I get in a situation, until like the last 2 months, I've always had a stop on my account, just because I'm a stubborn trader. I am. And, when I rarely had big drawdowns, and it used to be 20K, then it went to 50K, then it went to 100K. Right. And, if it ever got over those numbers, it's either going to be, 20K, 50K, or 200K, or, or I get out of it. But overall, I don't want to be in that situation. So I had put on a stop loss, which obviously I took off in June, July. But the point being is that, for a lot of people, I suggest that. I told my buddy who is training and doing pretty well. Like I said, he was trained from one of the best traders I know. Bam, 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 bam. Great days. Give back one day.
Yeah.
Give back that whole week. Repeat. And so at the end of the month, you got nowhere, but 80%, 85% of the days, he was good.
Yeah.
So if he just had that one stop in place, he'd be good. So we added that, and he had just had his best month ever, followed off the other best month ever. So
Nice.
Hopefully that continues. But just like that, you only need to build that account once, and it's just all about keeping it.
It's really about, like you said earlier, it seems like the focus is keeping the money and having rules or systems in place to prevent you from giving it all back.
Yep.
That's a big key, because stop loss, I use it as max loss, same thing. But when I implemented that, it helped me stay consistent, because I'm stubborn like you. Like if I lose a couple of times, then I may want to take it again. And then if I do, maybe it will send me an error and say, you cannot, you hit your max loss. I'm like, okay, I
do a max loss per ticker. And that just allows you, because I like to size into stuff. And, and the reason why I wire out a lot is just because if I have buying power, I'm using it. I max out my buying power every single day. And, it is what it is. That's just my personality. That's how I trade. But my biggest flaw is once I'm sized up, if it starts to kind of go the other way, the way that I wasn't thinking, most of the time I'm pretty good. But it's that one time that I want to protect myself against.
Yeah.
So that's why I implemented it. And right now it's $100,000, so right now, which may sound crazy to people, but right now that's, you can only get back a couple days, a day or two max. And it's crazy out there right now, and you need to have wide P&L swings, and you need to be okay with that. But, we'll see. And when and if the market ever calms down, then maybe that goes to 50K or 20K. It just depends on what is normal right now. Yeah. And, you just got to adjust and adapt, just like we were talking about earlier, to the current market conditions. So, but that's good. And I do the max loss per ticker, not just on the account, just because how many times you go back to the same well and you're like, all right, I'm going to get it back. And it's like, just doubled the loss.
Yeah. Okay. It's like sometimes you just have the wrong read on this one ticker. You're just like, I just need to get away from that. I'm curious, because before we wrap, we're getting close to wrapping this up. I just want to ask you, you've been trading for a long time. Over time, you've been growing your account. You've been growing your stop loss and everything. And we're talking big numbers here, which for you, it's all relative, right? It's all relative for everyone. Everyone's in their own situation. But what I'm curious about, no matter if you're a trader who $1,000 in a week is like a badass week for you.
Right.
Regardless of what that number is, how do you stay neutral? You know what I'm saying? Like when you're doing, like going back to, like if it's hard to celebrate as a trader, right?
Yeah.
Because like I think you know where I'm going here. Like how do you?
Well, it sucks because your highs are really high, but your lows are always lower. And that's just the way it is.
Like, do you do things to stay grounded? Like as a father, as a husband, and like do you celebrate together? Like how do you handle that? Like when you're doing well, like what do you do?
Yeah.
Like do you celebrate, or how do you celebrate, or how do you stay neutral? Like the next day, I know you say next mentality.
Yeah, you've got to have your team. My wife and I don't really. I mean, she obviously knows, she's connected to the accounts and stuff, but we don't really talk about that type of stuff. It's more like Eric Wood, who a lot of people know, Tom Kelly, a few other people that I talk to every single day are my, rocks where, good or bad, share it all and pick each other up, whatever. Eric's getting smoked on something, I'm there. I'm getting smoked on something, he's there. And so that's kind of like your, you got your fist pump and then move on because, if you come in off a hot day and you think, you're gonna kill it and you're looking for that same trade the next day, it goes the opposite way. So I really think that, and like you said, it's all relative. So yeah, we talk crazy numbers, we talk little numbers, and that goes back to why there's no P&L, right? Because it comes down to the trade. What was it a good trade that you took? Was it a good scale? Was it a good opportunity? And no matter what level you're at, whether it's a $100 trade, $1,000 trade, 10,000 or 100,000, it's all the same because it comes down to this was the setup, this was the risk, this was the opportunity, and it paid. So if you can do that, it's just about how you can do it on 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x, and then continually going from that. But staying grounded is important. I don't celebrate wins ever. In that manner. To kind of quote two people, one named, one unnamed. Greg, it should be expected, right? So if you're trading well, it should be expected. So that gain, I mean, that's why you're here. That's what you're doing. So it should be expected. And then the other one is the other quote-ish was like it's the P&L is a byproduct of your trading process. So it should be expected. It should be that shouldn't surprise. It shouldn't
be a surprise. Yeah.
And as far as like I said, I like to wire out as well. I mean, I've let my accounts grow. One of the, I think maybe it was an interview with Aaron or somebody like that, maybe 10 years ago, and I always used to keep my account small. And Greg's like, "The hell's wrong with you?" I see you trade every single day. Like, why would you hold yourself back? So, but like I said, I use all the buying power, and I'm just kind of preventing, myself from getting sloppy. But with that said, I let it grow at a percent. So like maybe I wire out 80% of what I made that day or whatever it may be, and let it grow, at that level. But now to kind of get back to you, like family and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I also mentioned this on the scan this week is like, I've acquired like beach property, lake property, things like that, where look, if it's all about P&L, if it's always about, can you make 10 million, 20 million, 30 million? Like, it just never stops, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's always going to make more. So, at some point you got to kind of figure it out. And, once you have kids, maybe that changes from the Lambo lifestyle to, what can I do for my kids, or what can we do for the future? And so that's kind of where I'm at, where I can work, because I work hard a lot. Yeah. And so what can I do today that's going to set myself up for even the weekends? The weekends I get to play hard, except for an hour on Sunday when I do the scan or like an interview like this. But I get to play hard on the weekends. It's like vacation every single weekend, and you can't pay for that. You can't take that. You can't take all the money that you're going to make in the markets with you. So I invest in that kind of stuff. I remember going to friends that had, those kind of things growing up, and those were some of the most fun, days of my life. So I want to be able to create those types of memories with that, rather than always be focused on,
Yep.
How do I get here? How do I get here? How do I get here? Because that never stops. Just like I think I said when I first went from, 100 grand, all I just wanted to do is get to 100 grand in an account. Yeah, right. Then you need 200, 500, a million. So that same thing never stops if you let it control you. So you always have to stay grounded. The next humbling trade is right around the corner. I've been on my A game all year. And then Kodak, it was okay. I'm fine. But that could, if I was sized the same size that I was sized the day before, realistically, that could have been bad, real bad. So, but fortunate that we have trades every single day. You got to stay grounded, focus, process, and that's really it.
Nice. Well, look, Nate, first off, thank you for being here today and sharing, your insight, your knowledge, and what your experience has been thus far and today. And what I'm curious about, if there's anyone out there who may not know where to find you, which would be shocking, but if they don't know, could you share with them where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, none of the parody type accounts that are popping up every single day. There's like 10 Instagram accounts, 5 Twitter handles a day offering account management programs. None of those are me. But Investors Live. Twitter.com/InvestorsLive, Instagram.com/InvestorsLive, or InvestorsUnderground.com is the chat room.
Perfect. Well, Nate, again, thank you for being here, my man, and I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity, man.